this week's movie review. Shin Godzilla, or Godzilla Resurrection, depending on which title you saw when you guys get to go see it. Okay, so I guess to start off, we had shown some trailers for this on our social media page, and we talked about it on the Goods podcast about this Japanese version of Godzilla making its way back to screens. And it's been a while since the Japanese have actually done, or Toho has actually done, an actual Godzilla film. Around Final Wars is the last ones I really remember. And so it's a great thing to actually see that the Toho Godzilla is back on the screen. And it seems that they tend to do these particular movies after America's already tried to do an Americanized version of Godzilla. It almost feels like Toho's like, okay, you guys didn't quite get it right. Let's show you how to do a Godzilla film. So it's really exciting that we now have Godzilla Resurrection on screen, or True Godzilla, or New Godzilla, or Godzilla. Another one of the meanings for Shin is that we have this in theaters. Now, last night I actually went to go see an early screener for this. I know it's going to be coming out in a limited market and selected theaters when it actually makes its way. There's not an official release for this version of Godzilla in the U.S. market. Right now it's under the Funimation studio, so it may just see selected theaters and then actually make it the video later. But however you guys get a chance to see it, I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Normally in these reviews I kind of start off with the cast and who's going to be in this film, but the cast is all Japanese, so instead of me going ahead and butchering names, let's just start with the most important person of the cast, Godzilla. Godzilla's in this film, and if you were kind of had a problem with the 2014 American version of Godzilla not really being on screen, well, we're going to talk about that in this film. But Godzilla's our main focal point in this film. There is a human element to it. There's actually quite a bit of a human cast in this movie, which is a staple of Godzilla films. They always have some sort of human element to move the plot along, whether it's just the American versions or the Japanese versions or the Toho versions. They always have something. Godzilla can't give you dialogue. As much credit as we want to give Godzilla, he can't really give us dialogue to help the story move along. So there is a full Japanese cast. What's funny is that they actually bring over some American cast or some Japanese who actually do an American accent. I don't even say American accent. Who actually speak in English because they're supposed to represent the ambassadors from America. But that's all I'm going to go into as far as the cast. Let's talk about the plot of this film. Okay, so for Godzilla Resurrection, it's basically a Godzilla plot. But the great thing about this one is that we're going back to 1954. Well, not literally going back to 1954, but we're going back to a situation where Godzilla's the bad guy. We're doing a complete remake and reboot. So this is a Tokyo Bay situation where, you know, there is an incident that goes on in the water. They go to investigate, and lo and behold, there's this creature that nobody's ever seen before that's now out of the water causing all types of destruction through Tokyo. That's every Godzilla plot in existence. Whether it's Toho, whether it's American made, that's all the plots wrapped up in one. That's what we get in this one. But Godzilla's always been a simple plot, so I can't really fault them on that. So, if that takes care of the plot, let's go ahead and talk about what I like to talk about in these reviews, is the goods and the bads. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and put up my spoiler warning, because I'm going to talk about some spoilers. Not a lot of spoilers, but some spoilers are going to be talked about. I feel like they're necessary to kind of get my point across about what I liked and what I didn't like. So, this is your warning. Alright, if you're still here, let's start about the goods. Alright, the goods of this film is that I really like the serious, or the more serious tone that they take with this film. The previous Godzilla films, except for the American ones, or at least the 2014 one, they've all been a little bit campy, a little bit fun. It's always kind of a monster fight, or Godzilla's the big hero. You know, everybody kind of lives in a world with Godzilla. This one is a more realistic take as far as this is your Nolan Godzilla film. It's a more realistic take than how the world would deal with this rampaging monster going through a city and just wreaking havoc. It almost looks like a natural disaster. You get to see the government and their prime minister as far as making decisions, dealing with collateral damage. I really thought that was a great element. Another thing that I liked about it is that the human aspect of Godzilla movies have never really been the bright spot of it, but it was in this film because Godzilla does take a little bit of a backseat, but the movie doesn't falter because of that. They give you a lot of dialogue with the human characters that's really interesting, and it's not set up to be funny, but there are some funny moments through the dialogue that you're just like, oh, okay, that's kind of humorous. But it really makes you think about how the type of decisions they have to make for something like this. Like I said, they treat it like a natural disaster. That brings me up to my next point, is that another thing that I liked about it is the way they make you look at a rampaging monster. They give you more of a witness eye view. You're on the ground. You get to see Godzilla looking up from a distance. They even show you devastation, almost like if like a typhoon or hurricane had hit something, or an earthquake, and then you see like how the city's leveled. That's what you see in this. You do get to see this Godzilla actually level the city, so don't get me wrong thinking that it's one of the 2014 ones where it's just kind of like, ooh, he's there, and then here's the devastation. This one you actually get to see why it's being caused, but you get more of a realistic, a more grittier vibe to where this, like, man, if I was in this, I would be terrified, and there was nothing that the military can do to stop this thing. So another thing that I liked about this film is the music. The music, they actually borrow some of the older Godzilla songs, and you kind of hear them in the background. But not only that, just kind of building on nostalgia, they give you some songs or some of the score, it makes you kind of help you get into the mood that they're trying to set, that tense nature, and it works really well. If you have a movie where you think about the music, or not, that you can remember the music element to it, once you're out of the movie, they did a great job, and I think that's what they did in this film. So that's where I'm going to stop as far as the goods, because I don't want to give you too much of this film if you haven't seen it already. Like I said, it's going to be in select theaters, so a lot of people probably have not seen this film. But we'll jump into some of the things that I didn't like in the bads. So the bads of this film is that if you are, how do I say it? If you didn't like the 1998 Godzilla because of how they changed it, or the 2014 Godzilla because you thought he was too fat or too big, or whatever the case may be, you're going to have some issues with this, because Godzilla does not start off as Godzilla all the way through this film. He actually, here's our spoilers, he actually starts off as he mutates throughout the film. He starts off as this other creature, and what makes that bad, not because it's not Godzilla, it's because when you first see it, if you're not ready for it, it comes across a bit comical with the way the eyes look, the way his body moves. So it does take a minute for you to kind of settle in and just kind of accept that that's what they're doing in this film. So that's one thing you might want to watch out for. So it's a minor bad, but it is still a bad. Another thing about this is that they change a lot of the, well, not a lot, but they change some key elements to the lore and his powers. We've all defined Godzilla, having radioactive breath, being able to build up a charge through his plates on his back. I can't think of the dinosaur term for it. But doing that and, causing a crap load of destruction. But in this one, they explain the lore a little bit different as far as Godzilla's creation. And the almost to where we kind of know Godzilla as like a dinosaur-ish. This one, they don't really reference what he really is. I guess they leave it ambiguous because they can do more in sequels, or they just didn't want to say what they were really kind of hinting to what he was. And like I said, I'm not really going to touch on that because that's really too much spoilery. But you feel the change. You're like, I don't know if I like that. Back to the powers. They give him more powers, and I guess because it's a remake and they have an opportunity to do their own thing that they would, so they do some things with some lasers and like things you've never seen Godzilla do before. I mean, it's hit or miss. I'm not quite sure if I like the way it came off and how it was used, but some people may like that. So that's more my preference on it. Last thing that I found as a bad in it, they really sold you, at least in the trailers, that we were getting, old school Toho Godzilla with a guy in a rubber suit, running through, a model of Tokyo. Well, this one, the Godzilla is CGI. So when I realized that he was CGI, I'm like, okay, they're going to do more with this one, more than they could get out of a guy in a rubber suit. And to me, it felt like they were just trying to get you to remember the guy in the rubber suit and not take advantage of the technology they had in front of them. Maybe that was a budgetary thing, but there is some situations, and this is a little spoilery to you, because there's a moment where he is on land and he rests. And when he rests, he just kind of stops and becomes stationary. Why is that a problem? Because he's just sitting there. Even in the older Godzilla films, Godzilla will return to the water. He would have gone back into the bay. He would have rested there. This one, he's just kind of sitting there and just basically a statue in Tokyo. And when you see the differences they did with the character design of Godzilla, I guess you could say maybe that's what the look they were going for. It's kind of freaky, and it's just kind of like, did they just run out of a creative thing to do with it? Because his eyes don't blink, and he just kind of sits there. And to me, I just thought, like, they could have done more with this. And I guess other people may have thought, like, ooh, that's just kind of weird and freaky, and that makes me feel a little bit more uncomfortable than to have him sleek off to somewhere else. So maybe it's a personal preference of me, but that's what I found as a bad. Going into the later parts of the movie, I'm not going to spoil this, though, for you guys. I did have a problem with them explaining some things as far as what was going on and why these things happened to work in the end. It was just kind of like they just kind of pushed past it, because they got into a situation where they were being helped with the Americans that kind of helped deal with the situation, and then we just kind of, oh, this is our solution, and then boom, we solved it. And I was a little like, that felt a little rushed, and you didn't do a lot of explaining of why this particular situation worked. So that's what we're going to end it with the bads. I normally don't do spoiler reviews, so I apologize for guys if you do follow me and you don't. You do like that I don't do spoiler reviews. I try to give you some warning because I had to touch on those to kind of explain my feelings in it. I couldn't figure out a way to get around that. But with that said, that's going to wrap up my thoughts of Godzilla Resurgence. How do I feel about this movie? I'm a big Godzilla fan, so I was really caught up in more of the nuances that they did with the Godzilla in here than the things that I didn't like about it. So I think it set itself up to do more good things going forward than the things that I didn't like in this first one. I can move forward and just say, okay, those are the things I didn't like, let's see what they can do going forward. It was enough that I enjoyed the film. Will you enjoy the film? If you're a Godzilla fan, of course you're going to enjoy the film. Unless you're just one of those people that don't like change and hate it, Godzilla 1998 or anything that's not Toho. But this is Toho, so you would figure it will fall into your wheelhouse. They did make a lot of changes in this film. So if you don't like changes, it's not for you. But if you're a Godzilla fan and you're welcoming things that them doing different, you really kind of dig this film. Kids will like it. I mean, it's Godzilla on screen. I will tell you, though, if you take kids to it, it is slower. It seemed like it's meant for more of an older audience. So little kids may not enjoy it as much. You may want to take older kids to go see it. That's how I felt. Alright. So that's all I got for this week's movie review. We'll try to make it back here next week so we can review something else.